New Orleans, a city of mystery, a city that 1 million people proudly call home, at least the ones above ground, because New Orleans is also home to many beings that can't find their way back. Watch as our group of paranormal investigators attempt to discover these lost souls. Join us as we explore New Orleans, the most haunted city in America.
I'd like to talk a little bit about why we call our cemeteries the cities of the dead and give you a little information about our burial practices. We call them the cities of the dead because they are literally like little cities. They have little streets that wind through them. They are above ground and they resemble people's homes in a lot of ways. As a matter of fact, you could say that these wall vaults resemble apartment buildings and our freestanding family tombs resemble people's homes. Here in New Orleans, we do bury the dead mostly above ground. There are a lot of reasons for this. One is very European tradition of burying above ground. A lot of the Spanish settlements in the Caribbean and other tropical regions have things like the wall vaults. You'll see these. And it makes sense for us to have them here. Also because we do have a high water table, this simply makes sense. A lot of the other influences in our cemeteries do, however, come from a very famous cemetery in Paris called Pere Lachaise. It has beautiful above-ground monuments, albeit above mostly below-ground burial, but the architecture of our cemeteries has been directly influenced by that in Pere Lachaise. A few other reasons are that we want to be able to visit the dead and enjoy visiting the dead. And it's a lot more pleasant and aesthetic to do that here when it's above ground. How do these tombs differ from other burial practices? If you look at this wall vault, you might think to yourself, well, that resembles a mausoleum. But mausoleums in other parts of the United States are used for one burial each. We have multiple use out of the vaults and also of the tombs, which is unique. Now, if we have a wall vault, today we generally just own one. In the past in here, however, you had the option, if need be, of renting one. Now, why on earth would you be doing that? It's simple. We had a custom here, and it was just custom. It was not law. It was custom that when you were entombed, you were not disturbed for at least 1 year and 1 day. So if you lost another family member during that time, you would rent another vault until such time as those remains could be moved to join the rest of your dearly departed. Now, when we change out the burials, they will remove the casket from the last burial. Most caskets sold in New Orleans are made of wood, so the casket itself is simply discarded and then later burned. As for the remains that casket had contained, they would be swept to the rear of the vault. Then we would introduce our new loved one, brick and stucco the vault so it is resealed, and then replace the plaque. I'd like to tell you a little bit about All Saints' Day here in New Orleans. It's not quite as widely observed as it was at one time, but this was a day when people would come and spend time with the dead. In the 19th century, it was very competitive. People wanted to brag. I went to every cemetery in the city on All Saints' Day. What did you do? It almost rivaled Mardi Gras in terms of people in the streets crossing and visiting as many of the dead as they could on that day. There would be priests here for counsel. There would be nuns taking offerings for orphans and other charitable purposes. People would even come and bring food and visit with each other on All Saints' Day. Today we still observe it mostly in terms of people coming and leaving flowers and other items indicating that they've been here. Right now we are standing in front of the tomb of Marie Laveau, known as the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. This is one of the top 3 most visited tombs in the United States of America, the other 2 being John F. Kennedy and Elvis Presley. Okay, why are all these items around the tomb? These are offerings. They've been left by people who have found a connection with Marie Laveau. Some of these are for wishes already granted. Some are for wishes that they hope will be granted in the future. Different things have different meaning to different people. You know, I've been asked about the X's on this tomb. Everyone is aware of them. But what a lot of people don't realize is that these are simply desecration, no more and no less. You see, one time there was a rumor that if you wanted to make a wish of Marie Laveau, you would mark her tomb with 3 X's. Then you would turn around 3 times. Then you would knock on the tomb. You'd holler at her. You'd make a wish. And when it is granted, you come back and circle those X's. And I am in this cemetery almost every day, so I can vouch for the fact that those X's and that circle appeared at the same time, so that hardly counts. If you want to make a wish of Marie Laveau, I'm here to tell you she has never once let me down. I've never done anything other than this. Simply place your hand on her tomb. Make your wish. When she grants it, or comes to you perhaps in a dream with the knowledge you need to get what you want, come back to New Orleans and leave her an offering. It is that simple. The ghost of Marie Laveau, does she wander the cemetery? There are those who claim they have seen the ghost of Marie Laveau wandering through this cemetery at night. Some have reported seeing her doing rituals here in the cemetery. Still others have said they've seen her wander from the cemetery, winding her way back to her old home on St. Anne Street. Is it so? We don't know. You can decide for yourselves. But here's something that did happen on one of our tours a number of years ago. One lady on the cemetery tour took a photograph at the tomb of Marie Laveau and actually captured an apparition on that film. Now again, is that Marie Laveau? You decide. Josie Arlington was born Mary Dubler to German parents here in New Orleans in 1864. She led a very tumultuous life. By the time she was in her late teens, she was the mistress of a sporting man whose last name was Lebrano, also known as Schwartz. Safe to say he had a few aliases and was not necessarily on the up and up. And before long, she followed suit, worked under a number of aliases herself. She was a scrapper, a street fighter. She was irascible. She had a temper, and you didn't want to cross paths with her in the wrong way. She had a fight with another prostitute named Beulah. When this fight was over, Josie had lost most of her hair. Beulah came off a little worse, though, having lost part of her lower lip and part of one of her ears. She became a little more respectable, changed her ways a little bit, decided good manners might serve her in good stead, opened the most elaborate, elegant house in Storyville, advertising only amiable foreign girls who will only be at home for the very best gentlemen. Josie Arlington tried to make her way up through the ranks of New Orleans society, but money can't buy everything. She was still at the heart of it all a madam, so by most accounts, she was still shunned by the upper echelons of society. Even though she had built a beautiful home up on Esplanade Avenue, she had her niece educated at a convent school, but still it just wasn't enough. How did Josie Arlington finally get revenge on all those who had shunned her? I guess you could really make a point that revenge is a dish best served cold. Josie built a beautiful pink granite tomb in Metairie Cemetery, home of the rich and well-connected in society, and there was nothing they could do to stop her. There are those who say that Josie's tomb was haunted, almost as though that upper echelon was getting their revenge back on her in the afterlife. It was a pink tomb. At one time, where that Pontchartrain Highway now stands was the New Basin Canal. And there was a road next to that canal called the New Basin Shell Road. And there was a light, a toll light. And guess what? It reflected right onto that tomb that made it look as though it was indeed coming from a red light district. Eventually the road was closed when the canal was filled in, and suddenly that haunting stopped.
Stay tuned for more haunted New Orleans.